going to talk about the 7 resurrections that are mentioned in Oahspe, and we'll talk a bit about some of the meaning and the emblems that go with them. And there's the first resurrection, second resurrection, third resurrection, fourth resurrection, fifth resurrection, sixth resurrection, and the 7th resurrection. We know about the first resurrection from Oahspe, and the second resurrection, and the third resurrection. The fourth level is resurrection is the Orion level. The fifth is the Navanian level. The sixth is the Oetan level, and the 7th is the Eon level. And that's the total number that they give in Oahspe. And of course, Oahspe does talk about eternal resurrections. So there are more resurrections beyond this, but this is where Oahspe stopped in the resurrections. And this, as we'll see, it's quite a bit to accomplish just to sort of get an understanding of what these mean. And we'll start with the first resurrection. Now, the first resurrection is basically laboring to improve self, and if you're doing this for in your all highest light toward the Creator, toward the all-person, toward the ever-present, the Great Spirit, then that's called being in the organic first resurrection. Now you'll notice that here in this emblem there is the leaf of life. And what this means is that I'll say what that means in a moment, but we have to understand that there's a circle here. Now this circle represents a reach of a person. And it's essentially not only the reach, but the wheel that they sort of traverse in their experience in life. So the leaf of life is there to sustain a person. And this leaf of life comes from the Creator. And if you're a faithist, if you worship the Great Spirit, then the leaf of life becomes like a reality to you. You can sense it, you can feel it, and you can understand that you're being sustained. Now, those in the inorganic first resurrection, they also get sustained, but they don't necessarily understand that there's anything sustaining them per se. They might just say, well, life is sustaining me, that's life, and chance and whatnot. But really, it's the leaf of life. And without the leaf of life, man would just be lost in the field, so to speak. And his life wouldn't be sustainable, essentially. Well, that's the first resurrection, then, is self-improvement. Because you're trying to go around here to your reach and attempting to find out who you are, what you are, where you're going, what life is all about, and so forth. And discovering the Creator. Now, at some point, you'll start working together in a group. And this then becomes the basis of the second resurrection. And the second emblem of the second resurrection, you'll notice, has everything that the first one did, except the addition now of a horizontal line. Now this horizontal line represents the foundation, the outer foundation. This outer line then represents the outer foundation. And what the faithist does is they work with others and organically working with others, and like in a fraternity, in order to establish a good foundation for the resurrection of others is the second resurrection, because you start to labor for others, but it's also some for self as well, for sustaining the community. You could say that the first resurrection was grades 1 through 33, 33 through 66 in the second, and 66 through 99 in the third. Just as sort of a general rule of thumb, but it's a very general rule of thumb, because it's a lot more complex than that, a lot more other factors to take into consideration. But in general, it might help for you to think of it in that way. So this second resurrection, the leaf of life is still there sustaining, and so it's not only sustaining you in life itself. So in other words, this is you up here. You still have this, but once you've attained this, you carry it with you, and once you've attained this, you'll carry it to there, and so forth, all the way up, and you never lose what's came before either. So so we start here with, and when we make the Creator sign, we say from the east to the west, and from downward upward forever. That's this one up here, but you start always with the foundation, and the foundation then becomes organic works. Well, next we move up here to the third resurrection. Now, the third I want to mention one more thing about the second resurrection. When you're starting off and laying this foundation, you're starting off with faith. Faith is over here. Now, who had faith? Now, who had the faith? Were in Egypt, in the land of Egypt. There were Moses and the Israelites were there, and they had to have faith in order to establish their foundation in leaving Egypt. And so that represented the faith, and the name that they had was Jehovih. And they had another name over here, Eloi. Well, if those two names are also, we can find those in Oahspe in the third degree of Imathachava, and in precisely those positions. So this is not happenstance. The things that happen in this world, there's great care that's taken to help man to progress. And it's not just for individuals, it's not just even for groups, but for the entire world to be uplifted. And so man went forth then in faith. Yeah, and you cannot progress to this. Well, in the old days before Cosman, because the earth was covered over with the four heads of the beast and the body of the beast here on the earth, the four heads of the beast had control over virtually all the earth except for some regions where they had difficulty, and over here in what we call North and South Gautama, which we know as America, the Americas, I should say, and on a few isolated pockets of that God, Jehovah's Son, still had the people there would listen to and flow along, go along with what God, the Son of Jehovah, desired. And now we go to the third resurrection. Now the third resurrection, you'll notice, had the vertical line added to it. And now what this represents is the inner foundation of man and of life, the inner foundation. And to attain to this level means to attain to the presence of Jehovah. You can perceive him because of this sustainment. Now, to actually, though, advance in this, to attain to this, requires, just as in this foundation, which is the outer foundation, this upper foundation requires starting with emeth. Emeth means that the light is inside, in the soul. That you understand the inner light, and and that's what gets developed in the inner temple of Jehovah, is this light here. So the two spokes on the wheel are started with faith and the emeth, and you have to have the faith first, and you'll get the emeth. The light will come later, And there's an order of light that is called the Chava in Oahspe that builds on this. There's an inner temple where you progressed in this. But I wanted to mention something here, because I mentioned Jehovih here, and over here, Eloi. Well, the same over here, Jehovih here and Eloi here. Well, down here is Elohim. And this is the start, you see, of this third resurrection. And you can't get into the third resurrection without it, without the emeth. Well, and this is now the faithists. There were two faithist types in Israel after they had left. There were the Israelites and those who were more or less, well, they called them hangers-on, but really they were people who knew that there was some good here, there was some light here, and they wanted to stay close to it because they knew that there was something there and they wanted to be a part of it. And those people, these were called, those who received a written law, and they were called Jews by the Israelites. Now, this was not a derogatory term, and basically what it meant was, it means empty, is what it means. And what it is, it's referring to that inner light. The name Jew, well, that was just one of the names. They were also called Levites and various other names, but it's worth mentioning that eventually the Oralites and those under the written law commingled to an extent and lifted up so that the Jews actually became then had the inner light in with them, and they had some of the teachings went with them. And now they've lost some of the teachings over the years, but the inner teachings. But they have a good, but they were able to get the light and have the light here, and they carried the message of the all one God, all one Creator around the world, or wherever they went. This is a metaphor, by the way, or a template of helping those who are not quite where you'd like them to be, to help uplift them. And how do you uplift them up to a higher level of understanding? They had the faith enough to come along, but they didn't. But they didn't understand this yet, and for that reason, we read in Oahspe that those other only the Oralites could attain to or receive the rights of Elohim, and that has to do with this and understanding who and what Elohim means and is, and that Elohim, rather than Elohim, means all in one and one in all. And I won't go into all the details of what this means, except in order to progress to the third resurrection, you have to progress through there. But you also have, you still have that leaf of life sustaining you. With that now being said, let's move on then to the fourth resurrection here. Now this one, you'll notice it looks exactly the same as the third resurrection, except there's no leaf of life. Well, in actual fact, there is a leaf of life there. Now this is called the Orion condition, to reach this particular attainment. Now the leaf of life, even though it's not shown, it's actually still there. And what it means at this level, the Orion has attained to the internalization of that leaf of life. He or she has become, they have become one with the leaf of life. And therefore it's internal within them. And they actually become as the leaf of life for Jehovih. There you can think of that as they being like his hands, or in movement. They understand the requirements for life and to keep life going. And that's why they oversee the planetary system such as what we have. But now you'll notice that the lines continue to go beyond the circle. And the reason for that is because this is man's reach, remember the circle. And man errors. He all these resurrections to here, and including this one, he makes errors. And Jehovah stabilizes it. These are sort of stabilizers. It also shows that he's beyond, he cannot be encompassed. Jehovah cannot be encompassed. And so he's always ever beyond, but able to stabilize you as well. And now, from that fourth, we'll go to the fifth resurrection. Now, the fifth resurrection is the Nirvanian state. Now, Nirvana represents a being a oneness with the soul of Jehovah. Basically, now you see there's no extensions beyond the circle. And what that represents is that the Nirvanian, by becoming one with Jehovah, has attained to his hand, basically to Jehovah's reach. They are, in essence, Jehovah's hand. They, when Jehovah desires something like that, they move to do it. They're his. So they've attained to that oneness. Now it's very interesting because in Oahspe we read that beyond the soul comes nirvana. Well, what that means is man is developing his soul, and by the time when he gets the nirvanian condition, he has perfected his soul. And it's at that time that he's going to actually perceive these resurrections that are above and beyond, are most clearly perceive and more understandingly perceive the resurrections that are beyond this seventh. But the leaf of life, as mentioned, will still be there. Everything, all this prior things will still be there. The next condition up from the Nirvanian then is the Oetan condition. Now the Oetan condition, you'll notice that it's the same as the Nirvanian, except there's no upright here. Well, what that means is there actually is an upright there, but you don't see it. And the reason that you don't see it is because the Oetan has put away self sufficiently. He does not manifest, or she does not manifest himself. As a group, they don't. And their labor is to create worlds, corporeal worlds. And so their labor is with this foundation. They're laboring to understand the foundation and to perfect themselves in creating that foundation. This particular attainment also, there's some meanings to this as well, which we won't go into now. Each of these conditions have many connections to many different things, and we'll touch on some of those conditions today. But the seventh resurrection is the eon condition. Now the eon condition, you'll notice there's not even a horizontal line there, because they're not working with the foundation. They've, in fact, have become one with the foundation. They understand the foundation. They've gone through all the processes and understand it, and they are as a trunk of a tree. Because this is, up above is light, below is darkness, in one sense of looking at these. And so this is the ground, below ground. Well, just like in the taproot of a tree, you have the sap and the essence of the tree gathering all this essence there. They have that. This is what they work in. And they're working to perfect that root, that inner essence. Now, you can't see this with corporeal eyes, of course, but even with the suis, you can't see particularly. It takes the ethi sight in order to perceive particularly this one. But now I want to mention that this vertical, by the way, this upright, that the upright by itself is Vavenho. It's called, this is what it was called at the time of Zarathustra, Vavenho, the son of Jehovih, and he was the good speech. So this was the good expression. This was the upright and the true and the beautiful and the good. And so that's the 7 resurrections. Now I promised that we would look at some of the meanings here and the correlations of what's, for example, in Oahspe. And these actually correspond to the first 7 eras of man. And we'll see how. Now the first era was about man and learning that he had capacity for knowledge, power, and dominion. And so that's what he learned in this one, in this particular phase. And basically it was developing himself in the leaf of life, developing himself in life, faith in himself. You'll notice that the leaf is down here in the self regions under here. Well, up here on the second era, the angels came and raised man upright. They wanted to raise man upright. Why did they want man to raise upright? So he could look objectively and see the outer foundation, the outer realm out there. You stand up and you can see further. You're more objective in your viewpoint. And so they raised man upright to become upright in the second era. In the third era, they brought man together to live in community. Well, to live in community, you have to have the good expression. You have to have the vaveno, or it's just going to fall apart. But now that first community of man, first civilization of man, really is what it was in that era. And mostly it was comprised of Ihans. And we have to remember that the Ihans were obsessed with doing good. Now, what that means is they would not have been able to sustain that civilization all on their own, or because of their own merits, because of their own whatever they had inside them. They needed help. The angels were there to help, because this was sort of setting a template, as it were, for that which was to come. And they did a good job of it. We're going to go to the fourth now era. Now, when man was back in the community, when man was upright and practicing, the beast said, well, possess whatever you want. It's good for you. Well, as long as man was inspired of Jehovah and man could perceive that, he stayed upright. But war eventually came into the world because of that. Because when you get people close together, you have to put away self. And so this was a lesson in putting away self. The first, basically, it's a strong lesson in it. And this one in the fourth era, which I think we'll just read here just on the fourth era.
So the angels of Jehovih taught the peoples of the earth to dwell together in cities and nations. This was the third era. Now, in that same time, the beast, self, rose up before man and spoke to him, saying, possess whatever you will, for all things are yours and are good for you. Man obeyed the beast, and war came into the world. This was the fourth era. And man became sick at heart, and he called out to the beast, saying, you said, possess all things for yourself, for they are good for you. Now behold, war and death have encompassed me on all sides. I pray, therefore, teach me peace. But the beast said, Do not think I come to send peace on the earth. I come not to send peace, but a sword. I come to set man at variance against his father, and a daughter against her mother. Whatever you find to eat, whether fish or flesh, eat it, taking no thought of tomorrow. So man ate fish and flesh, becoming carnivorous, and darkness came upon him, and he no longer heard the voice of Jehovih or believed in him. This was the fifth era.
And in the fifth era, then, man became carnivorous. And he cried out, the beast basically said, well, I'm in charge now. You see, there's no extensions there. There's no hope for you other than through me. Well, actually, basically, there was no hope for you than through self, is what the beast said. And it basically said, don't think that, I'm not here. This is what the conditions were telling him. I'm not here for you, the beast conditions. You're here for you. So, and what happened, what came out of this then was that the beast divided itself into 4 heads. And those 4 heads, then in the 6th era, each one of them looked like this. And they basically set themselves up to say, this is me up here. I'm up here. And you have to obey me. There's no resurrection up here except through me, the beast. And now we're at the 7th era, where that sort of beastly foundation is gone. And the foundation, it has to be an inner foundation. It will come to the outside because we still have to start here at the 2nd. We have to build from the organic 1st to the organic 2nd to the crystal and 3rd and so forth, all the way up here to the 7th era. And we can become one then with the tree of light as we proceed. And so that's just one corollary, if you want to put it that way, or one, and that's just one connection, a correlation with the resurrections and the eras that we've gone through. Well, that concludes our talk today. Thank you for listening.